Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Samich Amud Aleph, starting with the new Mishnah on Daf Nun Tes Amud Beis. The Mishnah continues to be speaking about Shechitas Korban Pesach, specifically when one has the wrong intention, the wrong machshava, when performing one of the Dalid Avodas Hadam, which is Ma'akev, which disqualifies the Korban. The four parts, the four different Avodas of Avodas Hadam is, number one, the Shechita in the Azora. Number two, when the Kohen then collects the dam from the neck of the animal with a Kli Shares. Number three, Hoilocha, bringing that dam with the Kli to the Mizbeach. And fourth, Zrikas Hadam on the Mizbeach. Says the Mishnah, HaPesach sheshochtoi sheloi lishmoi. One who shechs the Korban Pesach sheloi l'shem Korban Pesach, but rather for a Korban Acher, like l'shem Shlomim. V'kibel v'hilech v'zorach sheloi lishmoi. Or he is makabel the dam, or brings the dam, or zorek the dam on the Mizbeach, without the proper intention. Namely, he has it for a different korban in mind, a korban shlomim. The Mishnah goes on to say, Oy lishmoy v'shelo lishmoy, or he has the sake of the korban Pesach, and for a different korban, or vice versa, or shelo lishmoy v'lishmoy, or he has the intention for a different korban, a korban shlomim, and a korban Pesach, posel. All of these cases is disqualified no matter what order it may be. The Mishnah asks, what is this case of lishmo and lo lishmoi? Says the Mishnah, l'shem Pesach l'shem shlomim. If it's going to be l'shem Pesach, that's called lishmoi. If it's l'shem shlomim, a different korban, it's called sheloi lishmoi. Shelo lishmo v'lishmoi, then it's l'shem shlomim or l'shem Pesach. Ask the Gemara right away, that which we said in the Mishnah now, if l'shmoi v'sheloi lishmoi, or v'sheloi lishmo v'lishmoi, boy Rab Papa, he asks, ba'avoida achas tnan, or b'shtei avoidos tnan. Are we speaking about where it's one avoida? That means that in the same avoid of, let's say, shechita, he has the intention, the korban Pesach and the korban shlomim? Or is it referring to two different avoidos? In the avoida of the shechita, he has a korban Pesach in mind. Then in the avoida of the zrika, he has the korban shlomim in mind. The Gemara explains the question. Ba'avoida achas tnan, on the first side that we're talking about, it would be the avoida achas. Then it's totally, on the machlokes that we saw before on Daf Nun Gimel Amud Beis. There, we got a glimpse of the machlokes of Rabbi Yosi and Rabbi Meir. It's talking about over there tvura. When a person has an animal and he wants to sanctify the animal, and he says that the animal that is over there, a korban oila, he says that he wants that to then be sanctified over here as well. Now, it doesn't take away from the sanctity of the korban oila, but it also transfers, it gives this animal the designation of a korban oila. So he says like this, he says, Hareze tmuras oila, tmuras shlomim. He says both things. So the Mishnah says like this, Rabbi Yosi, the Omar af begemar dvorov adam nitpas. He says that it goes on both languages. The Rabbi Meir ha Omar tafus lashon rishon. In this case of, he says, Hareze tmuras oila v'tmuras shlomim. Rabbi Meir says it goes after the first lashon, and therefore the animal has the designation of a korban oila. Whereas Rabbi Yosi says, no, we take both languages that he says, both things that he says seriously. And therefore, since he said both, that Hareze tmuras oila and tmuras shlomim, so we have to let the animal graze, then become a balmum, whereby we can then sell the animal, take the value of the animal, and then buy with half the value a korban oila, and half the value a korban shlomim. So here the Gemara is saying that if we say like the first side, that it's one avoida, that means that he has kavana for the korban Pesach when he does the shechita, and then he also has kavana for the korban shlomim when he does that shchita. So he says both things, Korban Pesach and Korban Shlomim. So, since it would be possible in our Mishnah, it has to be then, according to Rabbi Yossi, who says we take both things that he said seriously. And therefore it's possible, because he had the wrong intention as a Korban Shlomim. And it can't be Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Meir, he says Tfois Lashon Rishon, whereby if you Tfois Lashon Rishon would be a Korban Pesach, would be valid. That's the first suggestion. If we say that it's one avodah, on top of Samech Amid Aleph, Oidilma, the second stad of the question is Bishtei avodas tan. We're talking about two avodas. Again, during the shechita, he has a Korban Pesach in mind. And then when he does, let's say, Zrikas Hadam, he says it's for a Korban Shlomim, as follows. Va'afil Rabbi Meir do Omar Tfois Lashon Rishon Hani Mili Ba'avoda Achas Aval B'Shtei Avodos Moide the Mifsil. Then on the second side, you can say it's even according to Rabbi Meir. Why? Because again, Rabbi Meir says Tfois Lashon Rishon, but that's when it's all together. But if you're going to say that there's two different avodas, he had the avodah of Shechita with a Korban Pesach in mind, and then when he does the Zrikas Hadam, a separate avodah, he says it's a Korban Shlomim. So even Rabbi Meir would say that's possible, because there, clearly he has two different Lishonos, and they're not on the same avodah. So therefore, it's going to be poisil, because he's doing one avodah with a Korban Pesach in mind, and another avodah with a Korban Shlomim. So both Rabbi Yossi as well as Rabbi Meir would say that it's possible. Those are the two stadim of the question that we have over here in our Mishnah. The Gemara now then qualifies and wants to then mivarer what exactly is the shaila. Omrei aheya, meaning on which part of the Mishnah are we talking specifically? Is it going on the part that says lishma and v'shaloi lishma, or is it going on the part of the Mishnah that says shaloi lishma and lishma? So Gemara is mivarer now. Inema ashaloi lishmoi v'lishmoi. If you're going to say that at first he has intention shaloi lishmoi and then lishmoi, bein ba'avoida achas bein b'shtei avoidos bein l'Rabbi Meir bein l'Rabbi Yossi ifsil le'mekamaisa. No matter who you go with, it'll always, whether it's going to be Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yossi, or the one avoida or two avoidas, it will be possible. Doha l'Rabbi Yossi nami af b'gemar dvor of adam nitpas islay. Because since he started off with saying that it's shaloi l'shem pesach, it's l'shem korban shlomim, so then even Rabbi Meir would say tfois lashon rishon. And not only that, but Rabbi Yossi, of course, says both lishonos are significant. So therefore, everybody would agree, no matter Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Meir, the one avodah or two avodas, that will be possible. So that's poshit, that can't be the shaila. Ella, the question that we're asking is, Gabe, the other part of the Mishnah. Ella alishmoi v'shaloi lishmoi, in that order, where he does it lishmoi, Korban Pesach, v'shaloi lishmoi, Korban Shlomim. On that is the question over here. We're talking about one avodah or two avodas. Is it one avodah that he's saying lishma, l'shem Pesach, when he does the shechita and he says l'shem Shlomim? Or is it two avodas where he does the shechita l'shem Pesach and does the zrikas adam l'shem Shlomim? What's the case that we're talking about? One avodah, two avodas. The Gemara now tries to prove from our Mishnah as follows. Toshma, it states in our Mishnah, Ha-Pesach she-shochtoi sheloi lishmoi v'kibo v'hilech v'zorak sheloi lishmoi. The Mishnah says that he shechted sheloi lishmoi, and he goes on to say the other avodas hadam that were lo lishmoi heichidami. What's the case that the Mishnah is talking about? If we will say that we're talking about that you read the Mishnah, that it's talking about he's doing all of these things, shelo lishmo, lama li'ad mechashev lekulu. Why do we have to then consider all of these things? Mikamaisa ifsil lei. The very first that he says that he did the shechita shelo lishmoi is already enough to poisil. Why do you have to say that he did the shechita lo lishmo, he did the kabbalah shelo lishmo, the halicha shelo lishmo, the halacha shelo lishmo, and the zrika shelo lishmo? Why need it? Elo, Lav hochi kitani. Rather, it must be saying the following. HaPesach sheshachta shelo lishmoi. The first case is that he shechted the korban Pesach shelo lishmo. He did l'shem shlomim, even though he did everything else lishmo. Oinami shoichta lishmoi v'kibel v'hilech v'zorak shelo lishmoi. Or he shechted lishmo, and all the other things he did, right? And the other things he did shelo lishmo. Inami shachtoi v'kibel v'hilech lishmoi v'zorak shelo lishmoi. Or we're talking about where he did all the avodas lishmo, except that the zrika was shelo lishmo. Dahavya leishtei avodas. That would be a case of two avodas. Now the Gemara builds up the question to prove its point. Ema seifa lishmoi v'shelo lishmoi. Then the next case that the Mishnah says, when he's doing it lishmoi and shelo lishmoi, what is that case talking about? If you're going to say it's talking about two avodas, hainu reisha, that's exactly the case that we just said before. Let's say, for example, he shechs lishma and he does the other things lo lishma, or he shechs lo lishma and everything else he does lishma. That's talking about two avodas. So therefore must mean that the case of lishma and shelo lishma in the Mishnah, that's talking about one avodah. Elala b'avodah achas. Therefore, we can prove that indeed the answer to our question is that we're talking about over here, lishmo and shel lishmo is one avodah. In the shechita itself, he has kavana. He says he's doing it l'shem korban Pesach, and then he says he's doing l'shem korban shlomim. And there we're going according to Rabbi Yossi. It says it's possible. You don't toy-face the first lashon like our mayor says, but rather you say both things that he says we take into account. And therefore, it's invalid, it's possible. So we, l'chara, have proven, like one side of the shaila, that we're talking about a case of lishmo and shel lishmoi, when it's all in one avodah. On that, the Gemara rejects this proof. Loi, la'olam b'shtei avodas. We're talking about two avodas. Why? Because v'reisha dekoi b'shchita v'komechashi b'shchita. Because the reisha is talking about when he is standing to do the shechita, and he does the machshava for shechita. Inami koi bezrika v'kol mechashe bezrika. Or we're talking about when he's standing to do then the zrika sadam, and he has the intention for doing the zrika. In other words, the shechita he has intention, let's say, for korban Pesach, and then when he does the zrika, he has intention for korban shlomim. So that's two avodos in the Reisha. The Seifa, that's talking about Lishmoim v'shlo lishmoi, is talking about something else. The Koi b'shchita v'kachashi b'zrika. While he's doing the shchita, he has kavana for korban Pesach, and he also adds a kavana that when he will be zorek the dam, he's doing it l'shem shlomim. Doma hareini shoichet as a Pesach lishmoi, lizroik dama shelo lishmoi. The kamash malan, the mechashvin ma'avoida la'avoida v'hainu boy the repop, and that is coming to teach us. Therefore, when he stands to do the avoida of shchita, and he has also the intention shelo lishma for the zrika, that means that it will be poisel such a korban, and that was Rav Papa's question in Masechet Zvachim. Does he able to poisel while he's doing one avoida with an intention for a different avoida shelo lishma? At this point, we have not proven our Mishnah when it says lishmo and shelo lishmo is talking about one avodah or two avodas. The Gemara now tries to prove from the hemshech of the Mishnah. Toshma. Oy shelo lishmoi v'lishmoi posel. Heichidami. That which the Mishnah says shelo lishmo and lishmoi. So what is that case talking about when it says it's posel? The Gemara works it out. If we're going to suggest it's talking about two different avodos, hashta lishmoi v'shelo lishmoi amris posel, shelo lishmoi v'lishmoi miboi. If you're going to say that lishmoi v'shelo lishmoi is two avodos, and that is posel, then certainly we can say kol shekain, that it's going to be posel if he begins with a machshava of lo lishmo. So therefore, we don't need that case. Again, if lishmo and shelo lishmo is two avodos, and that's possible, then shelo lishmo v'lishmo, which is two avodos, certainly will be possible. Elo must be la'aba avoda achas. It's must be talking about it's one avoda. Once we have the case of Shaloi Lishmoi and Lishmoi being one avodah, and it's possible, we can go back to the case that we're discussing of Lishmoi and Bishal Lishmo and say it's also one avodah. What's the Chiddush? The Chiddush is that when he says L'Shem Korban Pesach Lishmoi, and then he says L'Shem Korban Shlomi Shaloi Lishmoi, we say it's not like Rabbi Meir, who would say that that's going to be Toifas Lashon Rishon, it would be good, it would be valid. We say it's like Rabbi Yossi, that it's invalid because we take both Lashonos into account. So L'chor, we have proven at this point that Lishmoy and Shalosh Lishmoy in our Mishnah is talking about one case. On that, the Gemara says one avodah. On that, the Gemara says lo. You cannot prove that because lo oilam b'shtei avodas. We asked the shtei avodas. What do we need to teach that? Hooray! We already know it from Lishmoy and Shalosh Lishmoy. Then kol shekain when it's Shalosh Lishmoy and Lishmoy. Says the Gemara, no, b'dinhu the lo yitztrichla. You're right. We do not need it. It's not coming to teach us anything specific. The ID, the Tana Lishmoy, Vishal Lishmoy, Taninami Shalo Lishmoy V'Lishmoy. Once the Tana teaches us the case of Lishmoy and Vishal Lishmoy as two avodos and being possible, then it teaches us Agav, Loi Lishmoy and Shal Lishmoy is also possible in two avodos. But it's not coming to teach us a Chiddush. We wouldn't really need it in itself. So now at this point, we have not proven one way or the other. Is the case of Lishmoy and Shal Lishmoy talking about one avodah or two avodas? Toshma, the Gemara tries to prove from the next Mishnah, Lekamon, Daf Samech Aleph, Amud Aleph. Shachtoi Shaloi La'oichlov, he shechs the korban Pesach for people who are not going to be able to eat a kezayis of the basar of the korban Pesach because they're sick or because they're elderly. Vishaloli Minuyov, or he shechs the korban Pesach for people who are not included in the chabur. They were not counted already for the chabura. Or la'areilim ulitmeim. He shechs it for people who are areilim, have not had a bris milah after the 8th day. Or those who are tamei, who are anyways cannot eat from any basar kodshin. All of these cases, they cannot eat from the korban pesach. Posul. They're posul. It makes the korban pesach posul. So the Gemara says, Hacha pshita b'avodah achas. Here we're clearly talking about only one avodah, because he only has one intention. And it's with one avodah during the shechita. Umid the seifa b'avodah, if this Mishnah, Lekamon pei, on that Samech Aleph, Amud Aleph, is talking about one avodah, b'avodah achas, then Reisha non b'avodah achas, then we can also say that our Mishnah is talking about avodah achas, and we can push it our shaila. When it says, Lishmoy and Vishalo Lishmoy, it's talking about one avodah. Gemara is doiche this as well. Midi area, can you then go ahead and say that this is so? The Gemara says, Hagad the Isa, Hagad the Isa. Behold, this is like it is, and this is like it is. In other words, the Seif is talking about one avodah, and you can say that our Mishnah is talking about two avodas. Seifa ba'avodah achas, Reisha I ba'avodah achas, Oy b'shtei avodas. In our case, talking about it could be either one avodah or two avodas, but it's not muchrach that we're talking about one avodah.